The ancient stone tablet felt warm under Dr. James's fingers. He brushed away centuries of dust, revealing strange symbols that made his heart beat faster. The dim light of his excavation lamp cast long shadows across the underground chamber's walls. "This can't be right," he muttered, comparing the tablet's markings to his reference guide. The symbols didn't match any known Earth language. In fact, they looked more like the mysterious patterns scientists had detected in deep space signals. Back at his research station, computers hummed as they processed the tablet's text. Dr. James hadn't slept in 2 days, but he couldn't rest. Not when he was this close to something big. The translation program beeped, and his eyes widened as he read the results. The tablet told stories of creatures that hunted across the stars. Massive beasts with pitch-black fur that could move through shadows. These shadow beasts had terrorized advanced alien civilizations long before humans had invented the wheel. The text described them as death itself, wrapped in darkness. Dr. James was still processing this information when his computer screen suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. The signal came from far beyond Earth's atmosphere. As the screen flickered to life, he found himself facing 3 alien beings. Their appearances were so strange that his brain struggled to make sense of them. "Human scientist," the middle one spoke, its voice translated through his computer. "We are the Galactic Council. Your discovery has triggered our ancient warning systems. We must speak immediately." Within hours, Dr. James found himself aboard a ship unlike anything humanity had ever built. The Council had sent it to bring him to their central chamber. As he looked out the window, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another blue dot in space. The Council's meeting chamber was enormous. Hundreds of alien species filled the seats, each more bizarre than the last. Some floated in tanks of liquid, others shifted between different forms, and a few seemed to exist partly in dimensions he couldn't quite see. "Dr. James," the head council member's voice boomed through the chamber. "You have discovered information about beings we have worked millennia to contain. The shadow beasts are no myth. They are very real, and they are the greatest threat this galaxy has ever known." Holographic images appeared in the center of the chamber, showing massive black creatures that seemed to bend reality around them. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire, and their movements were like liquid darkness. "We keep them contained on a restricted planet," another council member explained. "The location is our most closely guarded secret. Your species' discovery of their existence changes everything." Dr. James listened as they explained how the shadow beasts had nearly destroyed several civilizations before the council managed to trap them. The creatures were intelligent, fierce, and nearly impossible to kill. Their ability to move through shadows made them perfect hunters. "Your species is now part of this secret," the head council member declared. "We must decide how to proceed. Humanity's first major interaction with galactic politics will be shaped by this discovery." As Dr. James looked around the chamber, he noticed something odd. When the council members spoke of the shadow beasts, they showed not just fear, but something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. He made a mental note to investigate further. The meeting ended with an unprecedented decision. The council would allow a small human research team to study the contained shadow beasts from a safe distance. Dr. James would lead the project. As he prepared to return to Earth and select his team, Dr. James couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. The council's fear seemed too intense, too personal. And why had the tablet been on Earth in the first place? He looked down at his copy of the tablet's translation one more time. There in the corner was a small symbol he hadn't noticed before. It looked remarkably like a human handprint. The containment facility was nothing like Dr. James had imagined. Instead of cold metal and harsh lights, it was a massive dome covering several miles of artificial landscape. The air inside felt heavy with ancient power. "This is Tom, my research assistant," Dr. James told the council guards. Tom was a quiet man with steady hands and calm eyes. He had worked with dangerous Earth animals before, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The viewing chamber hung above the facility's main area. Through its thick windows, they could see dark shapes moving in the artificial twilight below. The shadow beasts were bigger than Earth's largest predators, their black fur seeming to swallow light itself. "Remember the rules," the head guard warned. "No direct eye contact. No sudden movements. No attempts at communication. You're here to observe only." Tom set up their monitoring equipment while Dr. James reviewed the historical data. The Council had been containing these creatures for over 10,000 years, but their records showed something strange. The shadow beast's behavior had changed over time, becoming more aggressive with each passing century. "Look at this," Tom whispered, pointing at his screens. The equipment was picking up unusual energy patterns. The shadow beasts were emitting waves that looked almost like brain activity, but at frequencies no one had recorded before. Dr. James leaned closer to the display. "These patterns, they're similar to human brainwaves during sleep." He quickly typed some calculations into his computer. "The frequency is almost exactly the same." A shadow beast passed directly below their window. Its movement was like water flowing through air, smooth and impossible to track properly. The creature paused, lifting its massive head toward their chamber. Its eyes glowed with an inner fire that seemed to pierce right through the protective barriers. Tom felt a strange buzzing in his head. The beast was still staring up, and he could have sworn he felt something. A curiosity that wasn't his own. "The creatures are showing increased activity near your observation post," a council technician reported nervously. "This is unusual. They normally ignore the viewing chambers completely." Over the next few days, the human team noticed more oddities. The shadow beasts would gather below their window at the same time each day. They moved in patterns that seemed almost like ritual behavior. Most surprisingly, they appeared to be trying to match the frequency of the humans' brainwaves. "It's like they're trying to tune into our frequency," Tom explained to the council representatives. "Like old radio dials searching for the right station." The council members shifted uncomfortably. One of them spoke up. "In all our years containing these creatures, they've never shown interest in communication. They are killing machines, nothing more." But Dr. James wasn't convinced. He pulled up ancient records from the tablet they'd found on Earth. "Look at this symbol again," he pointed to the handprint. "What if humans weren't just random discoverers of this information? What if we're connected to this somehow?" That evening, as Tom was finishing his observations, something unprecedented happened. A shadow beast approached the viewing chamber's window, moving slowly and deliberately. Instead of its usual predatory stance, it sat back on its haunches, almost like a dog waiting for a command. The council guards rushed to raise additional barriers, but Tom held up his hand. "Wait," he said softly. "It's not attacking. It's presenting itself." The beast's eyes met Tom's, and this time the buzzing in his head formed into something clearer, an image, a feeling, a memory that wasn't his own. For a brief moment, Tom saw flashes of humans and shadow beasts together, not as enemies, but as companions. The moment broke when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Multiple containment breaches detected. A voice announced over the speakers, "All personnel evacuate immediately." Dr. James grabbed his research data while guards rushed into the viewing chamber. But Tom stayed still, his eyes locked with the shadow beasts. Something was about to change forever, and he knew he needed to be ready for it. Red warning lights flashed across the containment facility as sirens blared their warning. Council guards rushed in all directions, their weapons ready. Through the chaos, Tom remained perfectly still at the viewing chamber's window, his eyes still locked with the shadow beast's burning gaze. "Tom, we need to evacuate now," Dr. James shouted, grabbing his assistant's arm. But Tom gently pulled away. "Something's wrong," Tom said quietly. "They're not trying to escape. They're afraid." Before anyone could respond, the facility's main door burst open. A massive shadow beast, larger than any they'd seen before, had somehow breached the inner barriers. Its black fur rippled like smoke as it entered the viewing chamber, causing the guards to back away in terror. "Don't shoot," Tom yelled, raising his hands. "You'll only make it worse." The beast's eyes swept across the room, glowing like twin suns. Council members pressed themselves against the walls, their bodies trembling. Years of ingrained fear kept them frozen in place. But Tom did something that made everyone in the room gasp. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. The beast's head snapped toward him, its mouth slightly opened to reveal teeth that gleamed like polished obsidian. It was close enough now that Tom could feel its breath, warm and ancient, against his face. "Tom," Dr. James whispered urgently. "The Council's records show no one has ever survived direct contact." Time seemed to slow down. The beast lowered its massive head until it was level with Tom's. In its eyes, he saw not the mindless killer from Council legends, but something else: intelligence, curiosity, and most surprisingly, pain. The buzzing in Tom's head returned, stronger now. Images flashed through his mind. Shadow beasts running free among the stars, playing with children who looked almost human, protecting entire civilizations. Then darkness, fear, betrayal, and long years of imprisonment. Without thinking, Tom raised his hand. The council members watched in horror as his fingers moved toward the beast's head. "Stop him!" someone screamed. "He'll be torn apart." But what happened next would change galactic history forever. As Tom's hand made contact with the beast's fur, the creature did something no one had seen in 10,000 years. It purred. The sound rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. The beast's eyes half closed in contentment as Tom gently scratched behind its ear, just like he would with a large cat. "Impossible," breathed the council member, dropping their weapon in shock. The other shadow beasts that had gathered outside the window began making the same sound, their purring creating a harmony that seemed to shake the very air. Dr. James rushed to his instruments. "The frequency patterns are synchronizing," he announced, his voice filled with excitement. "Their brainwaves are matching Tom's exactly." Tom smiled as the beast pressed its head further into his hand. "They were never meant to be contained," he said softly. "They were meant to be companions. We just forgot how." The council's head of security stepped forward, his voice shaking. "In all our records, in all our histories, no one has ever. How did you know they wouldn't attack?" Tom continued petting the beast, which had now sat down beside him like an oversized guard dog. "I didn't think about what you told me they were. I saw what they were trying to show me." As if to prove his point, the beast turned its massive head and gently licked Tom's other hand. The gesture was so dog-like, so familiar, that a few council members actually fainted. Dr. James was already documenting everything. "This changes our entire understanding of these creatures," he said. "And of human history, too. The question is, what do we do now?" The beast looked at Tom with those fiery eyes, and he knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The galaxy's deadliest predator had just become humanity's newest friend, and nothing would ever be the same. The Council's main research facility buzzed with activity. Screens displayed brain scans of both humans and shadow beasts, their patterns pulsing in perfect sync. Dr. James hadn't slept in days, too excited by each new discovery. "Look at this," he said, pointing to an ancient star map he'd found hidden in the tablet's markings. "These aren't just random locations. They're colony worlds, places where humans and shadow beasts lived together." Tom sat nearby, the large shadow beast still faithfully by his side. He'd named her Luna, after the way her eyes glowed like moons in darkness. Other shadow beasts roamed freely around the facility now, their previous aggression completely gone. The genetic tests came back, a council scientist announced, entering the room with a stack of data pads. Her hands trembled as she read the results. "Humans share a unique neural pattern with an ancient species we thought died out millions of years ago. They were called the Guardians." Dr. James pulled up more images from the tablet. "The Guardians were peacekeepers," he explained, pointing to various symbols. They used shadow beasts as partners to protect developing civilizations. That's why the beasts are so good at detecting threats. It was their job. Luna made a soft, rumbling sound and nudged Tom's hand. Over the past few days, he'd gotten better at understanding the images she shared. "They're showing me more," he said quietly. "The Guardians didn't die out. They had to hide." The council chamber fell silent. Even the scientists stopped their work to listen. Something was hunting both the Guardians and the shadow beasts. Tom continued, his eyes unfocused as he received Luna's memories. A threat so great that the Guardians scattered their people across thousands of worlds, erasing their own memories to stay hidden. "Humans," Dr. James breathed. "We're their descendants. That's why the tablet was on Earth. That's why we can connect with the beasts." More test results flooded in from council labs across the galaxy. The evidence was undeniable. Humans had special brain structures that perfectly matched the shadow beasts' communication frequencies. It wasn't just compatibility. It was design. But why did the shadow beasts become so aggressive in containment? A council member asked, still keeping a safe distance from Luna. Dr. James pulled up the containment facility's records. "Look at the pattern. Their behavior changed after they lost their human partners. They weren't becoming more violent. They were grieving, crying out for the connection they'd lost." Tom stroked Luna's fur as she showed him more memories. Happy ones now. Shadow beasts playing with guardian children, helping to build cities, protecting their human partners from danger. "The council made a terrible mistake," the head scientist admitted. "We thought we were containing monsters, but we were actually imprisoning guardians. Partners. Friends." Dr. James studied the data flowing across his screens. "The really interesting part is what this means for humanity's future. If we've retained this connection after millions of years, then what else have we retained?" Tom finished. What other ancient abilities might humans have forgotten? Luna suddenly lifted her head, her ears perking up. Other shadow beasts in the facility did the same, all turning to face the same direction. Through their shared connection, Tom saw what they sensed: a distant darkness, an ancient threat, stirring after eons of sleep. "What is it?" Dr. James asked, noting Tom's concerned expression. "I think," Tom said slowly, "we just discovered why the Guardians needed the shadow beasts in the first place, and why we might need them again." Luna pressed closer to Tom's side, her powerful muscles tensing. In her eyes burned not just friendship, but purpose. The shadow beasts hadn't just found their long-lost partners. They'd rediscovered their mission. The council members looked at each other nervously. They had thought containing the shadow beasts was their greatest challenge. Now they realized that had just been the beginning. The council's emergency session had lasted for 3 days straight. Thousands of alien representatives argued back and forth, their voices echoing through the massive chamber. At the center of it all stood Tom, with Luna faithfully by his side, and Dr. James with his stacks of research data. "This is madness," shouted a delegate from a warrior species. "These creatures have been contained for 10,000 years. We cannot simply let them roam free." Luna growled softly, but Tom placed a gentle hand on her head. The gesture wasn't lost on the council members, a human calming the galaxy's most feared predator with just a touch. "Look at the evidence," Dr. James said, projecting his findings onto the chamber's main screen. "In the week since we've allowed controlled interaction, there hasn't been a single aggressive incident. In fact, the shadow beasts have helped prevent 3 accidents in our research facility." The screen showed footage of a shadow beast catching a falling scientist, another warning workers about a gas leak before instruments could detect it, and a third guiding a lost child back to their parents. "But the ancient treaties," another council member began, "were based on fear and misunderstanding," Tom interrupted. He closed his eyes for a moment, sharing thoughts with Luna. "The shadow beasts are showing me their memories of those times. They were defending their human partners from something. The containment wasn't protection. It was imprisonment of innocent allies." A group of human researchers entered the chamber, each accompanied by their own shadow beast. The aliens gasped as they watched the creatures act like oversized pets, some even playing with toys the humans had brought. "We've started a training program," one researcher explained. "The beasts aren't just intelligent. They're highly social and eager to learn. They understand complex commands, show emotional intelligence, and can even help with scientific research due to their ability to sense things we can't." Dr. James pulled up new data. "Their presence has already improved our understanding of space travel. They can sense disturbances in space-time that our instruments miss. Think of the advances we could make with their help." But not everyone was convinced. Half the council still supported the ancient containment laws. The debate grew heated, with some species threatening to leave the council entirely if the shadow beasts were freed. Then Luna did something unexpected. She walked to the center of the chamber, sat down, and began projecting her memories for everyone to see. Through their neural link, she broadcast images into every mind present. The council members saw the truth. Shadow beasts helping to build the first interstellar civilizations, protecting developing worlds from cosmic threats, playing with children of various species. They saw the betrayal, the fear, the confusion as they were suddenly treated as monsters. "They never stopped being guardians," Tom said softly. "We just stopped letting them be." A small alien child, who had sneaked into the chamber with their parent, suddenly ran forward. Before anyone could stop them, they reached Luna and hugged her leg. Luna gently nuzzled the child, purring softly. The chamber fell silent. "Perhaps," the council leader finally said, "it's time to admit we were wrong. The question is, what now?" Dr. James stepped forward. "We propose a new department, the Human-Beast Relations Division. We'll train shadow beasts and human partners, study their abilities, and reintegrate them into galactic society. Slowly, safely, but completely." "And what of the threat they were originally fighting?" someone asked. "The danger that made the Guardians hide among us as humans." Tom shared a look with Luna, both remembering what they'd sensed days ago. "That's exactly why we need to work together now. Something's coming. Something the shadow beasts remember, even if we humans forgot." The council chamber erupted in discussion again, but there was a different tone now. Fear was giving way to possibility, and ancient laws were beginning to bend under the weight of new understanding. The galaxy was changing, one purring shadow beast at a time. 2 months after the historic council session, the new Human-Beast Training Center bustled with activity. Tom stood in the main hall, watching as humans and shadow beasts worked together for the first time in millions of years. Luna sat beside him, her dark fur gleaming under the lights. "The first class of handlers graduates tomorrow," Dr. James said, walking up with a thick stack of reports. 20 humans, 20 shadow beasts, all perfectly sensed. "But we've got problems." Tom nodded. He'd felt the tension building. Several council species had filed formal protests against the program. Some had even threatened war if the shadow beasts weren't returned to containment. "Show them," Tom said to Luna. She stood up, her massive form drawing everyone's attention. With a gentle growl, she activated the training room's main display. The screen showed a star map, but not of the known galaxy. This was something else, something darker. Through their mental link, Luna shared images of an ancient enemy, beings of pure energy that fed on life itself, the same threat that had forced the Guardians into hiding. "They're getting closer," Tom explained to the gathered crowd. "The shadow beasts can sense them. That's why they're so desperate to rebuild their partnership with humans. We're running out of time." A group of protesters had gathered outside the center. They carried signs with ancient warnings about shadow beasts, demanding the creatures be locked away again. But they fell silent as they watched through the windows. Inside, a young handler was demonstrating the new training techniques. Her shadow beast, a smaller female named Star, moved through an obstacle course. Together, they located hidden energy signatures, identified potential threats, and even helped repair complex machinery. The shadow beasts aren't weapons. the handler explained to the watching council representatives. They're living supercomputers, sensors, and protective companions all in one. Look at this. She pointed to a sealed container. There's a dangerous radiation leak in there that our instruments can barely detect. Star, show them. The shadow beast's eyes glowed brighter. Suddenly, everyone could see what she saw. A complex web of energy patterns, showing exactly where the leak was and how to fix it. Now imagine this ability protecting our ships, our stations, our worlds, Dr. James added. The Guardians didn't partner with them by accident. They chose the shadow beasts because they could see things we couldn't. Luna suddenly tensed. Through their link, Tom saw what had caught her attention. The star map was changing. The dark energy beings were moving faster now, much faster than before. We don't have time for politics anymore, Tom announced. The threat the Guardians fled from. It's almost here. We need every shadow beast and every human handler trained and ready. The council members present looked at each other nervously. One stepped forward, an ancient being who had voted for containment. Show us again, they said. Show us what you see. Luna shared the vision with everyone in the room. The darkness between stars, moving with purpose. The hunger that threatened all life. And then, most importantly, she showed them the solution. Humans and shadow beasts working together, using abilities no one had even discovered yet. The containment laws are based on fear, Tom said quietly. But fear is what will get us all killed. Trust, partnership, understanding. That's what saved the galaxy before. That's what will save it again. Dr. James quickly typed on his tablet. The first class graduates tomorrow. The second class has 3 times as many volunteers. We can do this, but we need the council's full support now. Outside, the protesters had stopped shouting. Through the windows, they watched as humans and shadow beasts moved in perfect sync, preparing for a battle only they could see coming. Luna pressed against Tom's side, sharing one final image, a galaxy full of light, protected by the combined strength of humanity and the shadow beasts, together, as they were always meant to be. The revolution wasn't just changing laws, it was changing the future itself. The graduation ceremony for the first class of shadow beast handlers was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The council's great chamber, once a place of fear regarding these creatures, now sparkled with decorations. 20 humans stood proudly, each with their shadow beast partner by their side. Tom and Luna led the procession. Behind them, Dr. James carried the ancient tablet that had started it all, now fully translated and understood. The council members watched in amazement as the shadow beasts moved with grace and dignity, their dark fur rippling like star-filled space. 6 months ago, we thought these beings were monsters, the council leader began. Today, they are our greatest hope. They gestured to the massive screen behind them, showing the approaching dark energy beings, now visible even to conventional sensors. The shadow beasts had been right. The ancient enemy was returning and traditional defenses would be useless against them. But each handler team had already proven their worth. In training, they had detected and neutralized energy patterns similar to the approaching threat. The old laws are officially abolished, the council leader announced. The Shadow Beast Containment Act is replaced by the Guardian Restoration Program. All restrictions on shadow beast movement and breeding are lifted. Luna purred loudly, the sound echoing through the chamber. Other shadow beasts joined in, creating a harmony that made the air itself vibrate with joy. Through their mental links, they shared their happiness with everyone present. But that's not all. Dr. James stepped forward. We've made an even more incredible discovery. He pointed to new data on the screens. The human-beast bond doesn't just allow communication. It awakens abilities in both species. Abilities we're just beginning to understand. Tom raised his hand, and Luna's eyes glowed brighter. Together, they created a visible shield of energy around themselves, a defense against the dark energy beings that had threatened the galaxy so long ago. Other handler teams demonstrated similar abilities: healing powers, energy manipulation, enhanced sensors that could detect threats light years away. The Guardians didn't just partner with shadow beasts, Tom explained. They merged their abilities. Everything these creatures can do, we can learn to do together. That's why the ancient enemy feared this partnership so much. A young handler stepped forward with her beast. "We're already training the next class," she said. "And it's not just humans anymore. Other species are showing potential for bonding. The shadow beasts are choosing partners from across the galaxy." The chamber erupted in excited discussion. The very aliens who had once feared the shadow beasts were now eagerly volunteering for compatibility testing. Luna suddenly looked up, her ears perking forward. Through their link, Tom saw what she detected. The dark energy beings had changed course. They had sensed the awakening of their ancient enemies and were retreating back into deep space. "They remember," Tom said, scratching Luna behind her ears. "They remember what humans and shadow beasts can do together. And they're afraid." Dr. James checked his instruments. "The threat is withdrawing, but we'll be ready if they return. The second class of handlers begins training tomorrow, twice the size of the first. Within a year, we'll have handler teams on every major world." The council leader smiled, watching as a group of alien children cautiously approached the shadow beasts. The creatures gently lowered their massive heads, allowing the little ones to pet them. "Perhaps this is what we needed all along. Not just protection from external threats, but a reminder that the universe's most frightening things are often just misunderstood friends." As the ceremony ended, Tom looked at the tablet one last time. The handprint that had started their journey now seemed to glow with its own light. Humanity had done more than just rediscover an ancient partnership. They had reminded the galaxy that appearances could be deceiving, and that sometimes the deadliest predator could become the most loyal friend. Luna nuzzled his hand, sharing images of the future, a galaxy protected not by fear and containment, but by understanding and cooperation. The shadow beasts had finally come home, and the stars themselves seemed brighter for it. The story of humanity petting the galaxy's deadliest predator had become the story of the galaxy learning to pet them too.